John Barleycorn, or Alcoholic Memoirs by Jack London. We've got a new recording rig here, so we're going to try this. This is chapter 7, where I left off. Here we go. I was barely turned 15 and working long hours in a cannery. Month in and month out, the shortest day I ever worked was 10 hours. When the 10 hours of actual work at a machine is added to the noon hour, the walking to work and walking home from work, the getting up in the morning, dressing and eating, the eating at night, undressing and going to bed, there remains no more than the 9 hours out of the 24 required by a healthy youngster for sleep. Out of those 9 hours after I was in bed and ere my eyes drowsed shut, I managed to steal a little time for reading. But many a night I did not knock off work until midnight. On occasion, I worked 18 and 20 hours on a stretch. Once I worked at my machine for 36 consecutive hours, and there were weeks on end when I never knocked off work earlier than 11 o'clock. Got home and in bed at half after midnight and was called at 5:30 to dress, eat, walk to work, and be at my machine at 7 o'clock whistle blow. No moments here to be stolen from my beloved books. And what had John Barleycorn to do with such strenuous, stoic toil of a lad just turned 15? Had everything to do with it. Let me show you. I asked myself if this were the meaning of life, to be a work beast. I knew of no horse in the city of Oakland that worked the entire hours I worked. If this were living, I was entirely unenamored of it. I remember my skiff, lying idle and accumulating barnacles at the boat wharf. I remembered the wind that blew every day on the bay, the sunrises and sunsets I never saw, the bite of the salt air in my nostrils, the bite of the salt water on my flesh when I plunged overside. I remembered all the beauty and the wonder and the sense delights of the world denied me. There was only one way to escape my deadening toil. I must get out and away on the water. I must earn my bread on the water. And the way of the water led, inevitably, to John Barleycorn. I did not know this, and when I did learn it, I was courageous enough not to retreat back to my bestial life at the machine. I wanted to be where the winds of adventure blew, and the winds of adventure blew the oyster pirate sloops up and down San Francisco Bay. From raided oyster beds and fights at night on shoal and flat, to markets in the morning against city wharves where peddlers and saloon keepers came down to buy. Every raid on an oyster bed was a felony. The penalty was state imprisonment, the stripes and the lockstep. And what of that? The men in stripe worked a shorter day than I at my machine, and there was vastly more romance in being an oyster pirate or a convict than in being a machine slave. And behind it all, behind all of me with youth a bubble, whispered romance, adventure. So I interviewed my Mammy Jenny, my old nurse at whose black breast I had suckled. She was more prosperous than my folks. She was nursing sick people at a good weekly wage. Would she lend her white child the money? Would she? What she had was mine. Then I sought out French Frank, the oyster pirate who wanted to sell. I had heard his sloop, the Razzle Dazzle. I found him lying at anchor on the Alameda side of the estuary near the Webster Street Bridge, with visitors aboard, whom he was entertaining with afternoon wine. He came on deck to talk business. He was willing to sell, but it was Sunday. Besides, he had guests. On the morrow he would make out the bill of sale, and I could enter into possession. And in the meantime I must come below and meet his friends. They were two sisters, Mamie and Tess, a Miss Hadley who chaperoned them, Whiskey Bob, a youthful oyster pirate of 16, and Spider Healy, a black-whiskered wharf rat of 20. Mamie, who was Spider's niece, was called Queen of the Oyster Pirates, and on occasion presided at their revels. French Frank was in love with her, though I did not know it at the time, and she steadfastly refused to marry him. French Frank poured a tumbler of red wine from a big demijohn to drink to our transaction. I remembered the red wine of the Italian rancho and shuddered inwardly. Whiskey and beer were not quite so repulsive. But the Queen of the Oyster Pirates was looking at me, a part-emptied glass in her own hand. I had my pride. If I was only 15, at least I could not show myself any less a man than she. Besides, there were her sister and Miss Hadley, and the young oyster pirate, and the whiskered wharf rat, all with glasses in their hands. Was I a milk and water sop? No, 1,000 times no, and 1,000 glasses no. I downed the tumbler full like a man. French Frank was elated by the sale, which I had bound with a $20 gold piece. He poured more wine. I learned my strong head and stomach, and I was certain I could drink with them in a temperate way and not poison myself for a week to come. I could stand as much as they, and besides, they had already been drinking for some time. We got to singing. Spider sang The Boston Burglar and Black Lulu. The Queen sang Then I Wished I Were a Little Bird, and her sister Tess sang Oh, Treat My Daughter Kindly. The fun grew fast and furious. I found myself able to miss drinks without being noticed or called to account. Also, standing in the companionway, head and shoulders out and glass in hand, I could fling the wine overboard. I reasoned something like this. It is the queerness of these people that they like this vile-tasting wine. Well, let them. I cannot quarrel with their tastes. My manhood, according to their queer notions, must compel me to appear to like this wine. Very well, I shall so appear. But I shall drink no more than is unavoidable. And the Queen began to make love to me, the latest recruit to the oyster pirate fleet. And no mere hand but a master and owner, she went upon deck to take the air, and took me with her. She knew, of course, but I never dreamed how French Frank was raging down below. Then Tess joined us, sitting on the cabin, and Spider and Bob, and the last Miss Hadley and French Frank, and we sat there, glasses in hand, and sang, with the big demijohn went around, and I was the only strictly sober one. And I enjoyed it, as none of them was able to enjoy it. Here in this atmosphere of bohemianism, I could not but contrast the scene with my scene of the day before, sitting at my machine, in the stifling shut-in air, endlessly repeating at top speed, my series of mechanical motions. And here I sat now, glass in hand, in warm glowing camaraderie with the oyster pirates, adventurers who refused to be slaves to petty routine, who flouted restrictions in the law, who carried their lives and their liberty in their hands. And it was through John Barleycorn that I came to join this glorious company of free souls, unashamed and unafraid. And the afternoon sea breeze blew its tang into my lungs and curled the waves in mid-channel, before it came to the scow schooners, wing and wing, blowing their horns for the drawbridges to open. Red-stacked tugs tore by, rocking the razzle-dazzle in the waves of their wake. A sugar bark from the boneyard to sea. The sun wash was on crisping water, and life was big, and Spider sang. Oh, it's Lulu, Black Lulu, my darling. Oh, it's where have you been so long? Been layin' in jail, a-waitin' for bail, till my bully comes rollin' along. There it was, the smack and slap of the spirit of revolt, of adventure and of romance, of the things forbidden and done defiantly and grandly. And I knew that on the morrow I would not go back to my machine at the cannery. Tomorrow I would be an oyster pirate. As free a freebooter would be, as free a freebooter as the century in the waters of San Francisco Bay would permit. Spider had already agreed to sail with me as my crew of one, and also as cook while I did the deck work. We would outfit our grub and water in the morning, hoist the big mainsail, which was a bigger piece of canvas than any I had ever sailed under, and beat our way to the estuary on the first of the sea breeze and the last of the ebb. Then we would slack sheets, and on the first of the flood run down the bay to the Asparagus Islands, where we would anchor miles offshore. And at my last dream would be realized, I would sleep upon the water, and next morning I would wake upon the water, and thereafter all my days and nights would be on the water. And the Queen asked me to row her ashore in my skiff, when at sunset French Frank prepared to take his guests ashore. Nor did I catch the significance of his abrupt change of plan when he turned the task of rowing his skiff over to Whiskey Bob, himself remaining on board the sloop. Nor did I understand Spider's grinning side remark to me, "Gee, there's nothing slow about you." How could it possibly enter my boy's head that a grizzled man of 50 should be jealous of me? All right, let's see how that